As veterans, we're no strangers to helping others.
That's what we were taught, service before self.
But we do have one question for the veterans listening.
When was the last time you reached out for help?
If you or someone you know needs resources, whether it's for stress, finances, employment, or mental health, don't wait. Reach out.
Find more information at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
A quick content note before we start. This episode includes discussion of kidnapping and threats. We won't go into graphic detail, but I wanted to flag it before we begin because it's an important part of the story. Hey everybody, it's Ron. I want to tell you a story about business and how that story changed everything. The phones would not stop ringing. Inside the newsroom of one of the biggest newspapers in the country, editors were already reshuffling the front page when the name landed on the desk. And not just any name, Patty Hearst. In 1974, she was a 20-year-old college student and part of one of the most powerful media families in America. Her grandfather had built a newspaper empire that shaped public opinion for decades. And that detail changed everything. This was no longer just a kidnapping. It was a story about power and wealth and media itself colliding in public view. Updates arrived faster than they could be verified. A kidnapping in Berkeley, a radical group claiming responsibility, and tape delivered to a radio station. The facts were thin, but the implications were enormous. Editors understood something immediately, even if they didn't say it out loud. This story would not cool off. Not because of what was known, but because of who was involved. Wire copy started piling up. National outlets started calling. Television producers circled around. Each update pulled more attention than the last, even when it added very little clarity. The decision wasn't whether to cover it. That was obvious. The decision was how long a single story could justify dominating the public's attention. And with every new development, that answer quietly changed. But what happens to news judgment when attention refuses to fade? How does tragedy become continuous coverage without anyone declaring it a strategy? And on February 4th, 1974, as editors inside the San Francisco Chronicle watched the story expand beyond its original bounds, was the business of media already beginning to shift? From Business Basics, I'm Ron Trucks, and this is Business History, the daily podcast where we explain the stories that changed business forever. Every date of the calendar has a story where business reshaped the world. Today, February 4th, that story takes us to 1974, when attention became a business signal. In 1974, most newsrooms still believed they understood the boundary between reporting and spectacle. Crime stories were covered when they mattered, then released back into the world. Attention followed importance, not the other way around. And editors talked about judgment, balance, and public duty far more than they talked about ratings or circulation, even as both quietly shaped decisions behind the scenes. Even so, by this point, the business of journalism was already changing. Television had intensified competition. Newspapers tracked readership more closely than they admitted, and advertisers watched audience size with growing sophistication. Attention wasn't yet discussed as currency, but it was being measured that way. Then came the kidnapping of Patty Hearst. The crime itself was shocking, but what transformed it instantly was her name. The Hearst family wasn't just known because of the wealth. It was a media dynasty. Newspapers, radio stations, influence built over generations meant that editors understood that this story carried symbolic weight far beyond the city limits of Berkeley, California. What might have remained a strong, serious regional crime became national almost immediately. And that wasn't because anyone ordered it so, but because every incentive pointed in the same direction. Readers wanted updates and viewers stayed tuned. Silence felt like abdication. The story did not ask permission to grow, it just demanded space. As the days passed without any kind of resolution, something subtle changed inside the newsrooms. Coverage expanded even when new information was scarce. Updates, when they came out, they became events. Headlines evolved faster than the facts. The absence of certainty didn't slow the story down, it fueled it. No single editor made a conscious decision to overcover the story. Each newsroom responded to the others. Editors watched their competitors pretty closely, and they adjusted in real time. If they missed a development, even a minor one, that felt riskier than extending the story beyond its natural limits. And this is where business logic started to reveal itself. Once attention was captured, letting it go became economically uncomfortable. The ratings confirmed it, and the circulation confirmed it. Advertisers followed without needing to be persuaded. The longer the story ran, the more valuable that attention became, regardless of whether any clarity actually improved the story or not. And here's the thing. At this point, journalism didn't announce a new model, it just kind of drifted into one. The Hearst kidnapping demonstrated that attention could stretch a story far beyond its original boundaries, not because of malice or manipulation, but because feedback loops rewarded persistence over exercising restraint. What felt like responsible coverage, moment by moment, accumulated into something different. Tragedy became continuous.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
As the months dragged on, the story refused to resolve itself cleanly. Patty Hearst wasn't quickly recovered. Instead, she reappeared in fragments or audio tapes or photographs or maybe grainy surveillance images that actually ended up raising more questions than they answered. Every development complicated the narrative rather than bringing it to a conclusion. And honestly, for newsrooms, this was unfamiliar territory. The story no longer followed the traditional arc of crime, investigation, and then arrest. This one kept mutating. Coverage expanded to keep pace, not because understanding was getting any clearer, but because uncertainty sustained that attention. Editors began to see, often uncomfortably, that resolution wasn't required to hold an audience. In some cases, it actually reduced the interest. When Patty was eventually arrested, then tried, then sentenced, coverage didn't contract. It changed forms. Courtrooms replaced the crime scenes, and analysis replaced the reporting. The story became legal and political and psychological all at one time, but the machinery of coverage stayed on. What news organizations learned was not how to cover a kidnapping. It was how attention behaved over a period of time. Once captured, it could be extended or redirected or repackaged across phases of a single story. Tragedy didn't need a clean ending to remain valuable. As you might imagine, advertisers adapted pretty easily. Long-running coverage meant predictable audiences. Predictable audiences meant dependable revenue. What began as an extraordinary event hardened into an incentive structure. Years later, when 24-hour news channels emerged and digital platforms removed the physical limits of print space and airtime, this logic would feel familiar. The tools had changed, the lesson didn't. As editors inside the San Francisco Chronicle that day continued covering a crime whose ending they couldn't yet imagine, the media business had taken a quiet step towards an attention-driven future. learning that stories no longer needed closure to remain commercially powerful. And that all began on the day that Patty Hearst was abducted on February 4th, 1974. I'm Ron Trucks, and this is Business History, the podcast that finds the turning points behind the headlines. To hear more stories like this, follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. And if you're enjoying the stories, do me a favor and please don't forget to subscribe and leave a quick review. It helps more people find the story behind the business. And if you actually want to understand business better without the flaw for the buzzwords or the MBA language, start by visiting businessdailypodcast.com.
New products to launch, new people to develop, new goals to crush. Workday Go is designed for small and mid-sized businesses. By bringing HR and finance together on one AI platform, you'll have everything you need to think big, go big, and grow big. And activation is fast. It takes just 30 to 60 business days to get you up and running. Simplify your SMB on an AI platform you'll never outgrow. Workday Go.